4 brothers stood on the dusty platform in Fort Sullivan, Wyoming, each expecting to meet one mail-order bride. When the stagecoach door opened and 4 women emerged, clearly sisters, with the same auburn hair and defiant green eyes, the men realized this was no coincidence. And when the eldest sister turned to them with a loaded rifle in her hands and desperation in her voice, saying, "We arranged this. All of it. The gang that killed our father is 3 days behind us, and if you turn us away now, we're all dead by Sunday." The McKenna brothers understood their quiet bachelor lives had just ended, and something far more dangerous and precious had begun. Have you ever had your entire life turned upside down in a single moment? One decision that changed everything. That's what's about to happen to these 8 people. For brothers thought they were getting wives. For sisters knew they were getting protectors. But what they are all about to get is a family worth dying for. Drop a comment if you've ever had to make an impossible choice, and if you want to see how this unfolds. Hit that subscribe button because this story is going to take you on a wild ride. Now, let's see how this all began. 3 weeks earlier, Finn McKenna sat at the scarred wooden table in the ranch house kitchen, staring at the letter he'd written and rewritten 5 times. Around him, his 3 brothers were engaged in similar struggles. "This is ridiculous," Connor muttered, crumpling another attempt. At 32, he was second eldest, all lean muscle and quiet competence. How do you tell a woman you've never met that you want her to marry you? Honestly, Wyatt offered from across the table. At 28, he was the pragmatic one, the planner. You tell her what you have, what you need, what you can offer. Real romantic, 24-year-old Declan said dryly. As the youngest, he'd been most resistant to this entire scheme. "Dear stranger, I have cattle and loneliness. Please marry me." Finn, the eldest at 35, set down his pen. "Look, we all agreed this is necessary. The ranch is successful, but we need wives," Connor finished. "We need wives, partners, someone to build a life with beyond just cattle and endless work. And we're too far from town to court properly," Wyatt added, ever practical. "The few women in Fort Sullivan are already spoken for. Mail-order marriage makes sense." "Still feels strange," Declan insisted. But he was writing his letter too. They'd discussed this for months. The McKenna ranch, 15,000 acres of prime Wyoming grassland, was thriving. The 4 brothers worked it together, each with specific roles. Finn managed overall operations and dealt with buyers. Connor handled the cattle and range management. Wyatt managed finances and supplies. Declan, youngest but gifted with horses, ran their growing horse breeding program. They had money, land, security, and success. What they didn't have was family beyond each other. No wives, no children, no future beyond the next season's cattle drive. So they'd made a decision. Each brother would contact a different marriage agency. They'd seek women of character, intelligence, and courage, the kind of women who'd choose frontier life, who'd be partners rather than just housekeepers. They mailed their letters on the same day in early September, each to a different city's marriage agency. They received responses within 2 weeks. Finn's bride-to-be was Rose Hartley, age 26, from Kansas City. Educated, experienced with ranch life, seeking a fresh start. Connor's was Catherine Hartley, age 24, also from Kansas City. Skilled in medicine and herbs, strong constitution, wanted adventure. Wyatt was Violet Hartley, age 22, from Kansas City. Excellent with numbers and management, looking for opportunity. Declan's was Pearl Hartley, age 19, from Kansas City. Loved animals, especially horses, dreamed of the West. It took 3 days before Wyatt noticed. "They're all named Hartley," he said at dinner one evening. "All from Kansas City. Same agency." The brothers looked at each other. "Coincidence?" Declan offered. "Has to be," Finn said. "It's not an uncommon name." But something nagged at him. The letters had been almost too perfect for each woman's skills and interests aligned exactly with each brother's needs. Rose for him, the leader. Catherine for Connor, who'd lost a brother to untreated infection and valued medical knowledge. Violet for Wyatt, who lived in spreadsheets. Pearl for Declan, who lived in the stables. Too perfect, but they'd committed. Send money for travel. Made arrangements. The women would arrive on October 15th. Now, standing on the Fort Sullivan platform on that crisp autumn morning, Finn watched the stagecoach approach and felt anticipation mixed with apprehension. Beside him, his brothers waited. They'd dressed in their best clean shirts, vests, hats brushed free of dust. They'd shaved. They looked, Finn thought, like men trying very hard to make good first impressions. The stagecoach rattled to a stop in a cloud of dust. The driver climbed down, opened the door, and out stepped a woman. She was tall, with auburn hair pinned up beneath a practical bonnet. Her dress was simple but well-made, travel-worn but clean. Her eyes green and sharp swept over the four brothers with an assessment that felt almost military. Then another woman emerged. Same auburn hair, similar features, slightly shorter. Then a third, younger, with the same distinctive coloring. Then a fourth, barely more than a girl, who stumbled slightly on the step and was caught by the third. 4 women, clearly sisters, all staring at the 4 McKenna brothers. The silence stretched, broken only by the snort of horses and the creak of the stagecoach springs. Finally, the eldest woman rose. Finn realized with certainty stepped forward. Her hand rested on something in the folds of her skate. "You're the McKenna brothers," she said. "Not a question." "We are," Finn confirmed carefully. "And you're the Hartley sisters." "We are." Another silence. "This isn't a coincidence," Connor said flatly. "No," Rose agreed. She glanced back at her sisters, some silent communication passing between them, then returned her attention to the brothers. Her hand emerged from her skirt holding a small pistol not pointed at them, but present. "We need to talk. Privately. Now." Wyatt's eyes narrowed. "You arranged this. Coordinated to answer 4 different brothers from 4 different agencies." "Yes." "Why?" Finn asked, though he was starting to guess. Women didn't flee to the frontier with coordinated deception unless they were running from something. Rose's jaw tightened. "Because 3 weeks ago, the Crane gang murdered our father. Because Luther Crane claims we owe him our father's debt claims he owns us. Because we had 3 choices, submit, die, or disappear. We chose to disappear, and we needed protection to stay away." The words fell like stones into still water. "A gang," Declan repeated carefully. "You brought a gang to our ranch." "We brought ourselves to your ranch," the youngest sister Pearl spoke up, her voice trembling but defiant. "The gang was always coming. We just decided we wouldn't be alone when they did." Finn studied them. 4 women, travel-worn and clearly frightened despite their bravado, running for their lives, having orchestrated an elaborate deception to secure protection from 4 men they'd never met. It was outrageous, manipulative, dangerous. It was also, he recognized, probably the bravest and smartest thing they could have done. "How long until they find you?" he asked. Rose met his eyes. "Luther Crane is smart and well-connected. We covered our trail, but—" She paused. 3 days, maybe 4 if we're lucky. He won't give up. We're worth more to him as a point of pride now than whatever debt he claimed our father owed. "So you need husbands for legal protection," Wyatt said, understanding immediately. "Married women are their husband's responsibility, harder to claim legally." "And you need men who can fight," Connor added. "Yes," Rose said simply. "To both." Finn looked at his brothers. Connor's face was unreadable. Wyatt was clearly calculating odds and options. Declan looked shocked but not, Finn noted, angry. They could refuse. Send the sisters on their way. Avoid the danger entirely. But that would mean sending 4 young, educated, brave women who'd had the courage to save themselves to probable death. That wasn't something the McKenna brothers could do. "All right," Finn heard himself say. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going back to the ranch. You're going to tell us everything, and I mean everything about this gang, your father's debt, and what we're facing. Then we're going to get married to all 4 couples, today, legal and binding. Then we're going to prepare for a fight. Rose's shoulders sagged slightly with relief. You'll help us. Lady, you manipulated us into proposing marriage and brought armed criminals to our doorstep, Finn said dryly. Seems like we're already involved. Might as well make it legal and fight smart. The smallest smile touched Rose's lips. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Finn said. You might not survive being married to McKenna. That, Rose replied, is a risk we're willing to take. As they loaded into wagons for the trip back to the ranch, Finn watched his intended bride, his accidental, desperate, clever bride, and thought that life had just become infinitely more complicated. And, perhaps, infinitely more interesting. Behind them, Fort Sullivan streets bustled with normal life. Ahead, the Wyoming prairie stretched endless and beautiful. And somewhere, 3 days or 300 miles away, dangerous men were coming. The McKenna brothers had wanted wives. They'd gotten warriors. Now they'd all have to learn to be both. The ranch house had never held this many people. 8 adults crowded into the main room. 4 nervous brothers, 4 exhausted sisters, and Judge Potter, whom Finn had sent Declan to fetch at breakneck speed. "You're Satan about this?" the old judge asked, peering over his spectacles at the assembled couples. "All 4 of you? Today?" "Today," Finn confirmed. "Legal and binding." Judge Potter had known the McKenna brothers since they'd claimed this land 12 years ago. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. "All right, then. Let's begin." The ceremonies were brief, efficient, almost businesslike. Rose and Finn first, Catherine and Connor second, Violet and Wyatt third, Pearl and Declan last. 4 I-do's from men who meant it as a promise of protection. 4 I-do's from women who meant it as a prayer for survival. When it was done, Judge Potter signed the certificates with a flourish. "Well, that's the fastest 4 weddings I've ever performed. Mrs. McKenna, Mrs. McKenna, Mrs. McKenna, and Mrs. McKenna, welcome to Wyoming territory." After he left, reality settled over the room like dust after a storm. Rose broke the silence. "We should tell you everything. You've earned that." They gathered around the large kitchen table, the same table where the brothers had written their letters 3 weeks ago. Rose pulled out a worn ledger and spread it open. "Our father, William Hartley, ran a freight business in Kansas City. Honest Wyke, good reputation. 2 years ago, he borrowed money from Luther Crane to expand. What he didn't know was that Crane was using the business to smuggle stolen goods." Catherine continued the story, her voice steady. "When father discovered it, he confronted Crane, threatened to go to the law. Crane killed him and made it look like a robbery, but we knew better. Crane claimed father still owed him money," Violet added, her hands clenched. $20,000. Obviously fabricated. When we couldn't pay, he said he'd accept alternative payment. Us. "We'd become property," Pearl whispered, "to be divided among his gang or sold. We'd heard stories about women who'd disappeared into Crane's operation. We weren't going to be next." Finn leaned back, processing. "So you researched mail-order bride agencies, found 4 brothers in a remote location, and orchestrated this." "We read everything about you we could find," Rose said. "The McKenna Ranch is well known, successful, respected, isolated enough to be defensible. 4 brothers with military experience." Connor raised an eyebrow. "How'd you know about that?" "Small-town newspapers love success stories. 4 Civil War veterans build ranching empire," was the headline 3 years ago. Wyatt almost smiled. "You did your research." "We had to," Violet said. "We were betting our lives on you being good men, on you being strong enough to help us fight." "How many in Crane's gang?" Connor asked, his military mind already strategizing. "Crane plus 6 regulars," Rose answered. Maybe more he could call in, but those 7 are the core. They are ruthless but not particularly smart. Crane relies on intimidation and violence, not tactics. 3 days, you said. Finn was already planning. That gives us time to prepare. The ranch is defensible, Connor said, standing to look out the window. Good sight lines, solid buildings. We've got weapons and ammunition, and we're not exactly helpless. Neither are we, Catherine said quietly. All 4 brothers turned to look at her. She met their gazes steadily. You should know we can all shoot. Father taught us. We're not perfect, but we can hit what we aim at. We won't be liabilities, Rose added. We'll fight beside you if it comes to that. Declan shook his head, not in disagreement but in amazement. You 4 are either the bravest women I've ever met or the craziest. Pearl smiled faintly. Probably both. The next 3 days transformed the ranch into a fortress. Connor, drawing on his military experience, organized defenses. Windows were reinforced. Weapons were distributed and checked. Sight lines were cleared. The bunkhouse where the ranch hand stayed was positioned to provide crossfire if needed. The 5 ranch hands, good men who'd worked the McKenna spread for years, were briefed on the situation. To Finn's relief, not one considered leaving. You gave us fair wages and respect when other ranches treated us like dirt, old Miguel said, speaking for all of them. We stand with you. Con us deeds. The sisters proved their worth immediately. Catherine organized medical supplies, preparing for potential injuries. Rose worked with Wyatt on logistics, food, water, ammunition counts. Violet helped Connor map defensive positions. Pearl worked with Declan to move the valuable horses to a protected canyon a mile away. But it was the evenings that revealed the real transformation happening. That first night, after a day of frantic preparation, they gathered for dinner. Rose had cooked simple but good, and as they ate, conversation flowed more naturally than anyone expected. You were cavalry? Pearl asked Declan, genuine curiosity in her voice. Scout, actually. Spent 2 years tracking and reporting. Hated every minute. He paused. Well, except the horses. The horses were good. She smiled. I'd like to hear about them. The horses, I mean. Across the table, Wyatt was explaining ranch finances to Violet, who was asking questions that suggested she understood accounting better than he'd expected. Connor and Catherine were discussing field medicine, comparing experiences from battlefield surgery, Hayes from frontier nursing. And Finn found himself talking to Rose about freight logistics, discovering she had a head for business that matched his own. They were strangers who'd married for survival. But in the quiet moments between preparations for violence, something unexpected was growing. Trust, respect, the first fragile threads of something that might become more. That night, sleeping arrangements were awkward but practical. The sisters took the 2 spare bedrooms. The brothers bedded down in the main room and bunkhouse. Everyone understood marriages in name only. For now. Survival first. Everything else later. If there was a later. They came on the afternoon of the 4th day. Miguel spotted the first 7 riders approaching from the east, moving with the confidence of men who expected no resistance. Positions, Connor ordered quietly, and everyone moved. The brothers took primary defensive positions. The sisters backed them up, armed and ready. The ranch hands covered approaches and provided additional firepower. Finn stood on the porch as the riders approached, Rose beside him. The others were hidden but ready. The lead rider was obviously mid-40s, well-dressed for the trail, with cruel eyes and a smile that never reached them. Luther Crane. McKenna. Crane called out, stopping 50 yards away. Smart enough not to come into easy pistol range. That's right. I'm looking for 4 women. The Hartley sisters. Heard they might have come this way. Can't help you, Finn said calmly. Crane's smile widened. See, I think you can. I think they're here. I think you're hiding them. And I think you should step aside before this gets ugly. The only Hartley women here are my wife and my brother's wives, Finn said. Legally married, properly documented. You've got no claim. The smile vanished. Those women belong to me. Their father owed me a debt. Their father's dead. They owe you nothing. And even if they did, they are married now. Legal and binding. You've got no standing. Crane's hand drifted toward his gun. Behind him, his men shifted, ready. Last chance, McKenna. Hand them over. No. For a long moment, nobody moved. 7 against 9. But Crane didn't know about the 5 ranch hands hidden in positions. He thought it was 4 brothers and 4 terrified women. He thought wrong. Your funeral, Crane said, and reached for his weapon. Connor fired first, not to kill, but to disarm. The shot took the gun from Crane's hand, sending it spinning into the dust. Then everyone was moving. Crane's men drew weapons. Finn's people opened fire from multiple positions, controlled, precise shots that spoke of military training and preparation. Rose fired from beside Finn, her shot taking a gang member's hat clean off his head. Catherine fired from the window, forcing another man to dive for cover. It wasn't a gunfight. It was a tactical demolition. Within 30 seconds, 3 of Crane's men were wounded, 2 had fled, and Crane himself was on his knees, surrounded, with 5 rifles pointed at his head. You were saying? Finn said quietly, his rifle steady. Crane's face was purple with rage and fear. You can't. Can't what? Defend my home? Protect my wife? Stand my ground against armed men who came to my property with violence? Finn's voice was cold. The law's pretty clear on this, Crane. You attacked. We defended. And you lost. Connor stepped forward, collected weapons from the injured and surrendered gang members. Miguel, ride to Fort Sullivan. Get the sheriff. We'll hold these men until he arrives. Wait, Crane sputtered. You don't understand. Those women are my wife and sisters-in-law, Finn interrupted. Under my protection and the laws. You murdered their father, fabricated a debt, and came to collect human beings as property. The sheriff's going to be very interested in that story. Rose stepped forward, holding the ledger she'd brought from Kansas City, including the documented evidence of your smuggling operation. My father kept records. Names, dates, stolen goods, everything. Crane's face went white. It's over, Rose said simply. You lose. The trial was brief. With the Hartley ledgers as evidence and testimony from all 4 sisters, Luther Crane and his remaining gang members were sentenced to 20 years hard labor. The 2 who'd fled were wanted men, hunted across 3 territories. It was over. The danger that had driven 4 women to desperate measures, that had bound 8 strangers in sudden marriage, was finished. Which left an interesting question. What happened now? 6 weeks after the confrontation, autumn was deepening into winter. The ranch had settled into new rhythms, 4 couples learning to live together, work together, be together. Finn found Rose on the porch one evening, wrapped in a shawl against the cold, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. Thinking about running, he asked, settling beside her. She smiled. Would you stop me? No. You're free, Rose. You always were. The marriage was for protection. Crane's in prison. You and your sisters can leave anytime. Rose was quiet for a long moment. What if we don't want to? Finn's heart did something complicated. Then I'd say we might want to discuss making these marriages real. If you're interested. Real, Rose repeated. Meaning? Meaning partners. In everything. Building this ranch together. Building a life together. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Rose turned to face him, her green eyes reflecting the sunset. I manipulated you, Finn. Deceived you into marrying me under false pretenses. You did, he agreed. You were also brilliant, brave, and did what you had to do to save your sisters. I respect that. More, I've come to care about you. The real you, not just the desperate woman who stepped off that stagecoach. I care about you too, Rose admitted softly. These weeks, waking with you, watching you lead, seeing your honor and strength, she paused. I came here for protection, but I'm staying for you. Finn pulled her close, and she came willingly, fitting against him like she belonged there. Then stay. Build this with me. Be my partner in truth, not just paper. Yes, Rose whispered. Yes. Inside, similar conversations were happening. Connor and Catherine in the kitchen, discussing whether her medical knowledge combined with his livestock experience might open opportunities for veterinary work, a new frontier in the West, ending with him taking her hand and asking if she'd stay not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Her answer was a kiss. Wyatt and Violet in his office, poring over accounts and expansion plans. Her brilliant mind complemented him perfectly. When he asked if she'd stay and build an empire with him, she answered by pulling out her own list of ideas for growth. I've been planning our future for weeks, she admitted. He kissed her senseless. Declan and Pearl in the stables, working with the horses. She had a gift that matched his own. When he asked if she'd stay, she climbed onto a horse and challenged him to race. Winner gets to decide. She won. She chose to stay. They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like freedom and choice and joy. 4 months later, spring arrived at the McKenna ranch. The 4 couples stood together on a hillside overlooking the spread, watching new calves test uncertain legs and horses run wild in the greening grass. 8 people who'd been strangers were now family-bound not by desperation, but by choice, respect, and growing love. We should tell them, Rose said suddenly. Finn raised an eyebrow. Tell who what? Rose exchanged glances with her sisters, a smile playing at her lips. The other mail-order brides. The women who are desperate or scared or running. We should let them know there are good men out here. Real protection. Real opportunity. You want to run a marriage agency? Wyatt asked, amused. Why not? Violet countered. We proved it can work. And there are a lot of women who need what we've found. Safety, respect, a chance to build something real. And a lot of lonely ranchers who'd treat a good woman right if given the chance, Catherine added, looking at Connor. Pearl grinned at Declan. We could interview the men first. Make sure they are worth the women they are asking for. The brothers looked at each other, that silent communication perfected over years of working together. We'd need a system, Connor said slowly. Standards, verification, background checks, Wyatt added. Financial stability requirements. Character references, Finn agreed. We'd be responsible for these matches. Then we do it right, Rose said firmly. We create something good. We give other women the choice we fought for. Declan laughed. 4 weddings at once wasn't enough for you. You want to arrange more. Dozens more, Pearl said, her eyes bright. Hundreds. We build something that matters. Finn pulled Rose close, watching the sun illuminate his brothers and their wives, his family, chosen and built through fire and courage. All right, he said. The McKenna Hartley Marriage Bureau. We'll do it right. We'll do it together, Rose corrected. Like everything else. Together, all 8 voices agreed. The Crane gang had come to the McKenna ranch seeking to claim 4 women as property. Instead, they'd found 8 people who understood that family wasn't about ownership, it was about choice. Partnership. Standing together when the world tried to tear you apart. 4 brothers had ordered mail-order brides seeking companionship. 4 sisters had answered, seeking protection. What they'd all found was something neither expected but both desperately needed. Home. Real home, built on honesty, respect, and the courage to fight for each other. The West was still wild. Life was still hard. Challenges would come. But they'd face them together, and that made all the difference. 4 desperate women. 4 lonely men. One impossible coincidence that saved them all. The McKenna brothers thought they were getting mail-order brides. The Hartley sisters knew they were getting protectors. What they all got was family, love, and the kind of partnership that can only be forged in fire. Now here's what I want to know. Would you have had the courage to do what the Hartley sisters did? To orchestrate an elaborate plan to save yourselves and your family? Or would you have had the courage to do what the McKenna brothers did, stand and fight for four women you just met? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me, Team Hartley sisters or Team McKenna brothers, who showed more courage? And if this story reminded you that the best families aren't always the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to build, smash that like button, subscribe for more epic Old West stories of courage, love, and second chances. Share this with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to fight for your family, never too late to choose love, never too late to come home. Because somewhere out there, someone is running from their own demons, wondering if anyone will stand with them when danger comes calling. Be their McKenna brother, be their Hartley sister, be the family someone needs. What did you think of this story? 8 people, 4 weddings, 1 epic showdown. Tell me everything in the comments below. I read every single one. See you in the next story, where ordinary people do extraordinary things. Until then, remember, the best marriages aren't built on romance alone. They're built on courage, trust, and the willingness to fight together when the world fights against you. Now, Gio, leave that comment. Team Hartley or Team McKenna? I'm waiting.